With me now in studio, I-24 News Senior International Affairs Correspondent Owen Alterman. Owen, I want to start by asking about the parallels and contrasts between Trump and Netanyahu, significantly because both men are in legal and political trouble, but also because both men use the other one so often in campaign events and campaign speeches. How accurate is it to compare the situations between these two men?
Well, Jeff, you're absolutely right. One of the hallmarks of the Trump era, and for that matter, the Netanyahu era, are the parallels between the two. And here in this case, you're absolutely right. Both running for re-election, both facing these legal/political fights. All that said, there's one crucial difference between the two, and that's this. Donald Trump is much more in control of events than is Benjamin Netanyahu. In Netanyahu's case, it's a legal process. It's now off in the hands of the courts. It was in the hands of an appointed attorney general that Netanyahu really couldn't fire. And now it's in the hands of the courts. It's in the hands of the judicial system. It's outside the realm of politics. Of course, Netanyahu, as we know, could seek parliamentary immunity and delay the day of reckoning. But ultimately, it is a legal process outside his hands. As for Trump, it's very, very different. It's not a legal process, or in some ways it is, but in some very fundamental ways that you just mentioned, it's a political process. It's in the hands of the senators, and in the Senate, the Republican Party is the majority. Republican members of Congress and senators, as we just saw in that House vote, are not breaking with President Trump. So Trump is much more in control of events. And maybe for that reason, Jeff, there's much more opposition to Netanyahu within the Israeli right than there is to Trump on the American right. Of course, he's facing that primary challenge from Gideon Sa'ar come a week from today in the Likud party. Even beyond that, there's the factor of Avigdor Lieberman. There's other potential disquiet, even within the Likud, but also among those other right-wing coalition partners. And as we've seen over the course of the last year, Netanyahu unable to get a majority in the Israeli parliament, while Trump really has his fate locked up in the U.S. Senate one way or the other.
So we had J.D. Durkin say that in some levels with President Trump, this is now a scarlet eye, that the word impeachment had serious ramifications for Clinton. It's going to have ramifications for Trump. It just will be linked to him forever. How could that impact international relations moving forward?
Well, you know, listen, I'm not sure I agree with that. I mean, the reality is Donald Trump, Jeff, from the day he came down that escalator on June 16th, 2015, in some ways hasn't looked back, has been controversial, has been seen as divisive ever since then, has had half the public for him, half the public against him, and we've seen that in American public opinion. It hasn't moved over the course of the impeachment process. This impeachment process has added facts to the body of knowledge of Donald Trump, but it hasn't really added information. There was a lot of information available out there before August, before September, about Donald Trump, and I'm not sure that the facts of the impeachment and the facts that have been brought to light by those House hearings have really changed that body of knowledge and changed that information. For that reason, hasn't changed American public opinion, hasn't changed the trajectory of the 2020 elections. Not that Trump has those locked up. By no means. He could very well lose those elections, but his legacy was already so fraught with controversy before this impeachment process that, at least to me, it's hard to see this as adding much to it. As for his international standing, I think much the same. Donald Trump, very controversial on the world stage long before impeachment, all of those summits, the issue of his relationship with Vladimir Putin, the issue of his relationship with American allies, the ups and downs of his policy towards North Korea. In any event, already a very controversial and widely and hotly debated international legacy. That was true before impeachment. It's true during impeachment. It'll be true long after impeachment.
All right, Owen, thank you so much. And speaking of...